Okay, so the supplies that you'll want to have for our hands-on project towards the end of the meeting today are listed in the chat for you. So you can take some time now to gather them. I will probably give a few minutes before we start with the project to gather things. But I hope that you all join for that part. I think it'll be really fun.
It sounds great. Thank you, Annie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to just wait a minute or two, but we want to honor your time, so we'll be starting very shortly. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I think we'll start. I am Emily Kearns, the coordinator of Dementia Friendly Baltimore County. And I welcome you along with my colleagues from the Alzheimer's Association and Johns Hopkins. And I'm going to start immediately by sharing my screen. So I'm going to share it, and then I would ask that you just give me a thumbs up, let me know that you can see it. Hey, can you see that? Someone shout out yes, or give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. Thanks, Ethel. Good. So welcome to our third session in this series of the spring Living Creatively with Dementia. Today's session is the arts and living with dementia. Our presenter is Annie Holscher and with Yolanda Wright. So just so you have a sense of where we're headed today, today's agenda or today's flow includes me welcoming, so another welcome to you, an introduction. We will put today's session within a broader context. So we're doing this with each of the monthly sessions to talk a little bit about what's out there, what's the science behind some of this, what are some of the programs, and then usually we have an individual testimony. So I'll share a few videos, but very brief session or segment, because most of today will be focused on lighthearted art, the demonstration and workshop with Annie, facilitated also by Yolanda Wright, the program manager for Greater Maryland chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. This will be followed by discussion and Q&A. So if you have questions, you can hold them for the end or you can put them in the chat. We'll be tracking those and we will open up, as I said, at the end for those questions. And then there'll be a brief wrap up and announcement about our next session. I'll announce it now and I'll also bookend it and announce it at the end. But we will wrap up this 4-month session with a segment on Wednesday, June 9th, same time, 11 to 12:30 on Lego Play with Loretta Vini. So let's go ahead. I spoke a little bit about this spring series. The goal of it is to really grow our care support toolbox. We are partnering with the Alzheimer's Association and Johns Hopkins. And another goal is to reframe dementia, really move beyond the tragedy narrative. Most of us think about the images that are circulated in the media of the person living with dementia. They're usually very end stage, almost near death stage, where someone is pretty despondent, they're not responsive. But we're reframing dementia, as the national advocates say, between diagnosis and passing. There's a lot of good living to be done, especially through creative engagement. So the goal of this series is to provide the tools so that we can be more skilled in that creative engagement. And as I said earlier, the next one, the last one in our series, is on June 29th, Lego Play. There are still a few slots available. If you are a caregiver and you and your partner would like to join us, please let us know. We can send you the registration link. And so what's happening with art and dementia and well-being? Some of you, if you attended the music session, some of these links are familiar, but I think it's really important because music is one of the many different arts styles, or not styles, but practices. Also, I should mention that for each of these workshops, we have put together a resource list, and that you can access in the reminder that you received for today's session by clicking on a link. If you can't find it, please email us directly or call us directly and we will get you the resource list. But some of these that I will review today are on that list. So we talk about what else is going on and who's doing research on the power of arts, the art to impact our well-being as we live with dementia and as we care and support those living with dementia. You can go to the Johns Hopkins website. They have Arts and Mind Lab, and they're doing remarkable work, not only on research, but also on programming. And they actually have a progress report in 2019 talking about the impact of the different types of arts, music, poetry. Actually, I can hear some background noise, so can you be sure to mute yourself? That would be great. And there's also work being done overseas. Here's a link to the UK looking at dementia and the imagination, looking at mixed methods protocol for arts and science. So again, these are in the resource list. I've just pulled a few so that you can see that whatever we're doing here is not terribly innovative, or it is part of, let's reframe that, it's part of an innovative wave, and we are joining that. Let's go to the next. So as I mentioned, Johns Hopkins is doing an awful lot, as is the Alzheimer's Association. You can look at the neuro arts at Johns Hopkins, and there's evidence for arts as medicine. This is the verbiage. It's in italics because it's actually pulled from their website. And it says that science reveals that art can work hand in hand with traditional medicine. So it's not one type of support, traditional Western medicine or the arts. They actually go hand in hand. There's nice synergy. And what are some of the impacts? It can improve mobility, memory, and speech, can actually help relieve pain and the after effects of trauma. It can enhance one's mental health and learning outcomes. And we know that depression and other mental health struggles are comorbidities often found along with dementia. It can help build resilience and prevent disease. And again, this is pulled from their website, so you see the footnotes there. If you go to the website, you can learn more. The arts interventions can also lower the burden and the cost, of living with chronic conditions. And here are some examples. Music, which was the focus of the last session, has been proven to improve cognitive function in people with dementia, but it also helps reduce anxiety associated with cancer, relieve symptoms of trauma, and actually improve motor coordination. I had a friend who lived with Parkinson's and dementia, and he was a folk dancer. And his doctors say that the dancing actually contributed to him living such a long life. Dance eases symptoms of Parkinson's, and that's an example, and it's in their research. And poetry is another example, helps patients and health professionals deal with end-of-life challenges. They've also found reading fiction improves the capacity for compassion, which we all need, but especially when we're under caregiving stress. So there are other programs included under this arts umbrella. One is Time Slips, and this is a storytelling program that is pretty simple, and you can get trained online, and you can go to timeslips.org. But in a thumbnail profile, what it includes is that you show a photograph, and then together as a group or as a pair, the caregiver and the loved one, create a story about the photograph. And so it may have nothing to do with the facts of reality. The fun and the art, the creative process is actually in the storytelling about what we see and what we feel when we look at the photo. A side note, but really important, is that at many of our Baltimore County senior centers, our Senior Connections program staff are trained in Time Slips and are using that. So check out Time Slips. There are also other program links for this one here on poetry. There's an article in the Gerontologist on the power of poetry, and arts and music from the Alzheimer's Association. There's a wonderful link and demo. So we are, as I said, joining this innovative wave of reframing dementia by living well through creative engagement. Other programs include woodworking and dementia on Facebook. There's someone named Harry Urban who has lived 15 years with dementia, and he's a extraordinary woodworker, for example, and he's just learned 3D printing, and he's taking his woodworking design and he's creating these vases and other wonderful products through 3D printing. So the idea is that we can still learn and do new things. There are also programs through AARP, Alzheimer's Association. Also, I'm trying to think of the Hearthstone with Dr. John Zeisel, where folks living with dementia go to museums together in groups, and they do a slow pace, very accessible visit where you sit before art and you talk about the impact of that art on our feeling and our being. There's art therapy, and that's, here's an article about it. And that's what we're going to focus on today with Annie. And so I want to now stop sharing my screen and I want to share 3 short videos. But the first one is a news clip talking about arts therapy generally. The second one is a glimpse into a program, Alt's Place, that uses art therapy. And the third, I think, is most impactful, is a video about a dear friend of mine, a national advocate, a man who lives with Lewy bodies dementia, Mike Belville from Massachusetts, about how he learned painting after his diagnosis. So again, thank you for joining us. We will look at these videos and then Yolanda Wright will introduce our special guest, Annie, and then we'll proceed with the demonstration. Okay, can you all see this video? I need a thumbs up. Great, thank you. And we've tested the audio, so it should be good to go.
We're not actually hearing it.
I'm sorry, can you hear it okay?
No.
Can't hear it. Sorry, Emily. We can see but cannot hear it. This is Andrea.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me try again. Okay, can you see this now? Thumbs up, someone? Thank you. All right, let's try again.
It looks like an art class.
Can you hear it? Okay, great. Let's start. Thank you.
It looks like an art class with brushes, paints, and scissors, though it's not. It's an art therapy session.
You don't have to be an artist. Anybody can do art therapy. Anybody can make art.
This is Joe Caniglione's finished product.
Well, I don't know if it's doing any good for anybody else, but it did well for me. I enjoyed doing it.
Art therapy is a nonverbal communication that is taking place during a session, different from an art class where you are giving instruction. It's sort of like if you were to go to a counselor, a traditional counseling type session. However, it incorporates art so that when the therapeutic process comes within the art making itself. Would you like to try the red on her skirt?
This session is for residents of Wellspring Village at Brightview Warren, a senior living community. Participants in this group have memory issues.
Dementia is the umbrella term, and there are many different types of dementia, including Alzheimer's. The reason why the two words Alzheimer's and dementia are synonymous is because by far Alzheimer's is the most common type of dementia.
The Alzheimer's Association's Greater New Jersey chapter indicates nationwide there are 5 million people living with Alzheimer's disease. In New Jersey, there are 180,000 residents 65 years or older affected by the disease.
People who have dementia, Alzheimer's dementia, they have problems with communication, with cognition and memory, and so engaging in art therapy allows a different form, a different mechanism, avenue of communication. It allows them to express their feelings. It activates part of their brain that maybe they're not always activating, such as creativity, visual spatial, hand-eye coordination.
The art therapist incorporates different materials into her sessions, like papers of various textures and colors, beads, ribbons, and fabrics. She says this gives residents an opportunity to engage in different things and to connect with the material.
I try to pick things that are tactile for this population so that they can have a sensory issue with feeling it, or maybe it's scented, so some of the crayons have natural aromatherapies in them.
From there, art therapist Suzanne Dufour begins to have a conversation.
I kind of ask them, what it reminds them of, and maybe tell me a story about the flowers in front of you, or what do they remind you of? And someone might say, oh, well, I used to cook a lot, or I used to bake a lot, and so then we'll talk about how, well, did you have parties? And then it leads from one to another, so it acts as a bridge.
When I see the residents involved, it just brings me such tremendous joy. They often come out of their shell, and I see a new side of them, and they become more engaged, more creative, and more verbal.
Geriatric psychiatrist Dr. Matthew Barnes says patients with dementia can also experience increased depression, anxiety, agitation, and mood swings.
physicians are looking at medications as an avenue to help address those symptoms. So art therapy provides a non-medication intervention, which is really, outstanding, and we try to engage it as much as we can.
Dr. Barnes says the art therapy sessions also increase mindfulness and socialization. Angie Marjotis is enjoying this session with her friends.
It makes you laugh.
These works of art will be displayed throughout the community for all the residents to enjoy. In Warren, I'm Lauren Wonko, NJTV News.
Thank you. So now let's look at the second one, trying to get to it. Ethel, quick question. It looks like I have the menu up. There we go. Great.
You can just click on the second. There you go. Second.
There we go.
You're good.
Great. So let me just start to make sure. Can you hear the music? Can you hear that? Thumbs up. Great.
Al's Place is a model daycare for individuals without dementias.
And I have a song I bet you know.
Once a year, for the past few years, we've brought Noelle here from the Art Without Boundaries program.
Take me out to the ball game. We were doing what we call mnemotherapy. The basis of the therapy is to get information from the brain. All right, try to catch it with your left hand. Catch it with your left hand, and to give information to the brain. What do you see there? What is that picture?
Where you put pictures.
Where you put pictures.
Isn't that crazy? I can't think the word.
That's all right.
We're able to see the stage of Alzheimer's or dementia that they're in. We're able to get an idea of their vision, those who are at fall risk, memory issues.
This is more like a cooking class than an art class, because I'm not only going to give you the ingredients, I'm going to give you the recipe. A lot of people don't quite understand what we're doing because they see these beautiful paintings and they think it's about doing the painting, but it's not about doing the painting, it's about doing the painting. It's about the process. So we're going to put those bushes in first. We're going to put some bushes here, and we're going to bounce, bounce, bounce.
So when Miss Randy started the process and was looking at the first picture, which is a vase of flowers, she was just seeing the small details and couldn't see and identify even the word flowers. And even when she looked at the second picture, she couldn't identify that as flowers.
Yep, that up.
Throughout the process of the painting, she was more vocal, the words were coming to her easier. And actually after the session, she looked at it.
What do I see there?
Mm-hmm. What are those?
These are flowers.
At the end of the session, oftentimes we see such a change.
We really don't know why this works. I do know that it has something to do with using this big fat brush and going back and forth and back and forth. We never know. You know, sometimes we get huge results that just blow our socks off, and sometimes, you know, people just have a good time.
The paintings that they create, I mean, each one is more beautiful than the next.
And because she was willing to try, she did this amazing painting. Isn't that beautiful? Let's give her a big round of applause for a beautiful job.
Everybody loves to get their gratification, and they get such instant gratification when they walk out and they show off their artwork and everybody cheers for them. Through the generosity of different framers in the community, we will have all of those beautiful paintings framed, and we will auction them off at our event. So not only is the process helping the clients and they're able to create these amazing works of art, those paintings will be used to help to raise additional funds for Al's Place.
Okay, and now we will hear from Mike Belleville about the impact of painting on his life now that we have a broader context for what's going on elsewhere. Let me just test the audio with you.
Having a conversation.
Can you hear him? A thumbs up or yes verbally? Okay, great. So I will make this full screen and we'll start with Mike. This is the last video, and then it will be your turn, and Yolanda will take it from here.
I'm having a conversation right now, and most people would look at me and say, you don't look like you have dementia. Some of the biggest challenges of living with dementia, you lose your independence. Frustrations of trying to do something that you know you used to be able to do that now take minutes or longer. One of the hallmarks of Lewy body dementia, I have hallucinations. It's visual, it's perception, it's auditory. There's so many times I smell like there's smoke, like something's burning. I hear conversations, I hear people talking that aren't there. I mean, I was diagnosed at 52 and a half. Felt like I got hit by a baseball bat. I'm sorry. The last thing on my mind was that I'd be dealing with what I'm dealing with right now. I would do anything to go back. First, I was stunned and shocked because I had the same stigma that a lot of people do. And that's an old person's disease. You know, I'm only 52.
I can't think of life without him. So he's a little different. So, you know, his mind's a little different, but he's still there. And that's what we made 37 years ago. And I'm going to follow this through because I love him.
We're trying to change the myths or some of the stigmas that are associated with dementia. What I would love to do is to make people realize that this disease is a progression. Nobody wakes up the day after they get a diagnosis and all of a sudden they're end stage. Believe it or not, you can still learn new things. I've been teaching myself how to watercolor paint. People with dementia lose track of time or where they are or things like that. This does that, but it does it in a good way. When I'm painting or when I'm drawing, I have that same feeling, but I look down and I see that I accomplished something. And I get a lot of satisfaction out of that.
I love the way he's picking things up, and he's, that creative part of him is come out.
Just because you have a diagnosis of dementia doesn't mean that you can't try something new and completely out of the realm of what you think you would have ever tried. Since I retired from work, I've been teaching myself how to cook, and my wife loves that. She doesn't have to decide what's for dinner.
I hate cooking. I never liked cooking. So glad that he picked up the cooking, and he does really well at it.
The biggest thing I would want is to be included, to still feel like I'm part of society. Just because I have dementia doesn't mean that my life is over or that I don't want to contribute to my community, society in general, or especially my family.
Great. Well, thank you for your patience while we looked at the broader context and then got to meet Mike. So now I pass the baton to Yolanda Wright, who will introduce Annie and take it away. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Emily, for the powerful videos and the great resources that you gave as well. This is such a great series, and I hope that you have been able to enjoy many of them and continue to follow through to next month. It's my privilege to be here and to partner with Johns Hopkins and Baltimore County Dementia Friendly. And so now it's my absolute privilege and honor to introduce Annie Holscher. Annie is a licensed and board certified art therapist whose passion is helping older adults find creative ways to express their thoughts and feelings and explore their natural creativity. She graduated with a master's degree in art therapy from the George Washington University in 2010. Since 2015, Annie has been providing group and individual art therapy services for seniors in their homes as well as community settings. Annie focuses on encouraging people to practice and enjoy the process of making art rather than achieving a picture-perfect result. Through the use of various types of media, seniors can learn how to express themselves creatively, practice gross and fine motor skills, increase socialization, reminisce about favorite memories, improve decision-making, and learn new skills and techniques for artistic creations. And that's what it's all about. So, Annie, take it away. We look forward to this.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk about this topic with you. Working with seniors has just been my passion from my second year at GW. I had an internship at a day program for seniors with memory loss, and I knew right then that that was the work that I wanted to do. Didn't know that before I went to study art therapy, but I knew once I started working with people with dementia that that was a great fit for me. And so I hope that I'm able today to provide you with some useful information and skills that you can use to help your person with dementia or people, friends, to engage in art in a beneficial way. So I'm going to share my screen. I've got a little presentation. You are welcome to chime in during the presentation with questions or comments. You can also put them in the chat and then we'll answer them towards the end. If you didn't see yet in the chat, we are going to do a hands-on piece to this discussion today towards the end. And if you'd like to participate in that, and I hope you do, all you'll need is a piece of paper, something round to trace, like a plate or something to draw a circle on your page, and then any art materials you have. So color pencils, markers, watercolor, whatever you want to use. So we'll do that towards the end and I'll give you a little time to set up for it. But for now, let's learn a little bit. All right, so hopefully everyone can see this. So I like to call what I do with seniors, with people with Alzheimer's especially, memory care through creative expression. So it is going to be quite different than a step-by-step art class or like a sip and paint night. That's not really the way that I work. And I am coming at it as an art therapist and from the art therapy perspective, but I want to make clear that what we're going to discuss today is applicable to everyone. You do not have to be an art therapist to use these techniques or to engage in art with someone with dementia in a thoughtful, helpful way. But because I'm an art therapist, we're going to talk about it a little bit because I do think it's a very helpful tool to use with people with memory loss. So art therapy is a mental health profession where clients are aided in the use of art materials to express themselves. So it generally is a spectrum, right, of art as therapy. We are just making art and that's the therapeutic benefit, to art psychotherapy, where we're doing a lot of talking, we're doing a lot of symbolic work. We're using the art as a tool to communicate, but the work that we're doing is much closer to what you're doing in a normal talk therapy session. I would say that most of the time when you're working with people with memory loss, it's more towards the art as therapy spectrum because there's not as much deep discussion of mental issues depending on their needs, but especially not in a group setting. In a group setting, we're mostly focusing on the process of making art and the benefits that you get from that. So generally, art therapy can be used to explore feelings, reconcile emotions, manage behavior, develop new skills, and it's used a lot to help reduce anxiety and increase self-esteem. In order to become an art therapist or to say that you, for example, offer an art therapy program at your community or something like that, Maryland does require licensure for art therapy. So this is not an important screen for most of you, but it's helpful to know that it is a title protected career in Maryland. So you can't say that you have art therapy if the person that you that is presenting it is not licensed in the state. That's not true in a lot of states, but it is true in Maryland. So I am both board certified and licensed in Maryland. So let's get specifically to the benefits of art for seniors. I just love working with seniors because the attitude with which I and they approach the session is so much more positive than the way that you might do art therapy, say, in a psychiatric unit or in a jail, which are both also great places for art therapy to work. I love working with people with memory loss because the focus is on being in the moment and creating in the moment positive interaction. So some of the benefits that art therapy or art in general can offer to seniors is self-awareness. They might learn something new about themselves as they make their piece. Personal fulfillment, obviously, if it is something that you enjoy, that makes you happy, that makes you feel peaceful for an hour, that's a gift. Self-esteem and empowerment. This to me, both self-esteem and self-efficacy, the belief that I can do something, are my primary goals when I'm working with people with memory loss. Because we can lose so much of that sometimes as our independence goes away, as our brain functioning changes, and we're not exactly always the person that we remember being, or don't have the skills that we used to have. Our self-esteem can really suffer. And so art can be such a great way for people to feel that, because they're bringing something new into the world that didn't exist before. Even if it's not the most beautiful picture perfect piece of art, it didn't exist before they made it, which is a really cool thing to think about. Art can also help maintain independence by being able to practice various skills. You see there where it says gross and fine motor skill improvement. When I talked to my husband, he said, "Is that right? Gross motor skills?" He didn't know the term. Gross motor skills just means the bigger, larger movements that we need to make. And fine motor skills are the smaller, more detailed movements, like moving your fingers. Both can be really well enhanced by practicing art of various types. You know, with dancing, you're going to do a lot more big movements. With art, you might do more fine movements, but you can even, let's say you work on a bigger canvas, you're going to make bigger arm movements. So all of that can be practiced, all of which also helps with maintaining independence, because the longer that you can use your body successfully, and the longer that you keep stimulating your brain in various ways, the more independent you can remain. Reminiscence is something that I do not exclusively with seniors, but more often with seniors than any other group. You know, it is tying in the art that we're making to the rest of your life, to your memories. I'm sure a lot of you know that with Alzheimer's and dementia, the more recent memories tend to be the harder ones to access, and the longer term memories stay around longer. So art can be a tool to pull those out. For example, I worked with a woman once at a senior living community. She was on the memory care floor, and we were painting landscapes. And she started telling me all about the Fox River and growing up at the Fox River and how her family lived there. And when I was able later to have an art show and brought this up to the family, they said that she hadn't mentioned anything of that in years. They didn't even know that she remembered that. But when you're creating art that can tie into a memory, it tends to pull that out. And so reminiscence is a really important feature of art therapy for memory loss. You saw in the, I believe it was the first video that we watched today, the art therapist kind of guiding the participants through various questions. What does this remind you of? Did you ever do that before? We're going to talk more about that, because that's such an important piece of having a successful art group for people with memory loss. Can also help in decision making. That is one of the primary things that I emphasize in my groups too. Rather than me making a choice for you, even though they often want me to, I'm going to encourage them to make as many choices as they can so that the art that's created is an expression of them and who they are and not me and what I want. Other benefits, cognitive stimulation, that can be done in a lot of different ways, stress relief, and sensory stimulation. So you saw that as well in the first video where the art therapist brought in various textures, different materials so that people could explore and get different experiences. Scented materials sometimes. As many senses as we can stimulate, the better. So I like to think of art and art therapy generally with this population in this kind of easy to remember term: relax, relate, and release. So these are the primary goals that I think of when I'm planning how to engage with people with memory loss. I want them to be able to relax, first of all. Life is stressful. Senior living communities can be stressful. There can be a lot going on. And so I want the art therapy space to be somewhere where they can let some of that go and just relax. So art generally allows people to enter into a state of what's called flow, where all your energy is focused on one thing. You're just in the moment doing the work. So it's really good way of accessing some mindfulness, which, as we know, is a really important term these days, but also an important practice to cultivate in our own lives. The more we can live in the moment and focus just on what's happening immediately, the less stress and anxiety we have about the past or the future. So art is a really great way of inducing that feeling of flow. Second, I want people to relate. I want this to be a socially engaging process, whether they're only engaging with me, whether they're engaging with their care partner or the person sitting next to them or other group members, or they're looking out the window and talking about the birds flying by, or if they're alone and they're just relating to the artwork itself. Again, talking about reminiscence, what does it remind them of? Often I generally plan my groups just basically around a theme. So let's say we are doing landscapes, or what's another theme that I'll use? Favorite place or something like that. I will go around to each participant and say, wow, what does this remind you of? Here's some examples on the right side. What's your favorite part of autumn? Oh, did you ever pick your own apples? Did you preserve them? Did your mom teach you canning? That's so cool. That's a lost art that we don't really do anymore. So there's a million ways to tie in the work that they're doing with stories from the rest of their life. And that's a bigger goal for me than getting a good piece of art, is if they can make a connection to something else in their life, in the world, in someone else's life. That to me is like a really successful engagement. Because, you know, if you've interacted with people with memory loss, you know that their physical skills and ability to create in this way don't always line up with what they hope that their skills will be or how they hope it will turn out. So if they can still have a positive experience, even if their art isn't turning out the way they want, that is ideal. And that is where you can kind of really focus your energy and turn the experience positive, even if they would otherwise be getting frustrated. Okay. Release. I want people to be able to express their emotions or memories specific to each person that may or may not come out verbally. So while it's great when you have someone with dementia who is suddenly able to verbalize a memory that they haven't verbalized in a long time, they don't have to verbalize that to be having a positive memory or a positive experience. If that woman had never told me her story about the Fox River, that doesn't mean that it wasn't in her head as she was painting it. So, you know, when people say that art is a way to express yourself when you don't or can't do it emotionally or verbally, there's lots of ways that happens. There's so much nonverbal communication, but it's not always about like analyzing a picture either. That's one of the, well, I think that's one of my slides, is that there are so many misunderstandings about art and art therapy. I'm not going to be analyzing your picture and saying, oh, you're crazy. That would be silly, and it would not be helpful to any of us. But there is communication going on in terms of the amount of effort that's being put into creating something, maybe the number of colors used, maybe how long they're able to stay focused on something. There's a lot of communication there that we can observe and utilize to our benefit. Any questions so far? Okay. I want to get right into, how do you guys do this? How does a husband, wife, caregiver, engage someone with memory loss when maybe they've been a little resistant before, or maybe they haven't shown a particular aptitude for it, or maybe they used to paint a lot and now they don't know how to start it on their own? That is such a common reason why someone comes to me, to an art therapist, is their family will reach out and say, my mother used to paint so much. She's an artist, but she can't do it on her own anymore. Can you come help her? And the answer is almost always yes, because the skills are still there. But with dementia, a lot of times the, oh, I'm losing a word, the ability to start something on their own, that motivation is not there. It's hard to access, okay? So how do we engage with someone who might be new to this, might be a little resistant, is not able to just start an art project on their own? First, it helps if you already have a close relationship, if you already are warm and you know the person, and you can create a safe space where they know that they're not going to be judged, or that their work is not going to negatively affect them in some way if it doesn't turn out the way I want. The phrase I always use when I'm in a group and I have people saying, oh, I can't do this, I'm scared it's going to turn out badly, I just say, no one today is going to be grading or judging your work, because a lot of seniors have negative memories from their schools. I can't tell you how often I hear, I failed art in kindergarten, I can't do this. And what I say to that is like, yeah, there used to be really rigid beliefs about what art should be, how it had to look, and how it had to be made. That's not the way that I work. I just want people to engage with it and try something new. So as long as you're willing to try, you can have a nice interaction here. So the close relationship really helps. So caregivers, spouses, partners, you already have a leg up, because hopefully they already have some trust in you. And so you can just approach it as, hey, let's try something new today. If it doesn't work out, that's okay, but let's try it. Giving many choices is one of the best ways to start the engagement. Many in a series, not many at once though. So you want to think of it as starting with a broad option of choices and narrowing it down if their ability to choose doesn't match up. So for example, when I start a session, a group, I will describe the project. I will have all the materials already set up and laid out. And at some point I'll say, okay, let's go ahead and get started. A lot of people with Alzheimer's will be able to get started right away with that instruction and be perfectly fine. Some people will sit and look at the paper and not quite know where to start. So almost always my first question to them is, what color would you like to start with? Because that is an easy, non-threatening way to get people just that first little nudge to get them going. If they're able to say purple, great. I will either tell them to grab the purple, open it up, or I'll get it for them and place it in their hand, because a lot of times that is where the disconnect is. So I can't tell you how many times I've heard too from like staff or family or very people, my mother doesn't make art. I'll say, okay, that's fine. She hasn't done it in years. And then the first session I'm with them, they make art because I have physically placed the paintbrush in their hand. A lot of times what we perceive as lack of interest is lack of initiative and lack of confidence and lack of skills, where once they get started, they're able to go. They are interested, but they just are not able to initiate a lot of things on their own. If someone's not able to answer, what color would you like to start with? I'll go down to the next level and pick 2 or 3 and say, would you rather use blue or red? Or I'll grab 3 markers and say, pick from these 3. If they can't answer that, narrow it down further. Is red all right with you? Great. You know, so you just want to start with giving as many options as you can, and then narrowing it down only if they're not able to make that choice. But rather than saying, oh, we're doing flowers today, so grab the green, that's just not the way I work, because I want them to be able to choose and make as many choices as they can, so that they maintain that sense of independence and, again, self-efficacy, the belief that they can do something. You can give as much advice as you want and ideas, but I almost always present it as an idea and not even as a suggestion or a direction. And rarely, I'm going to say almost never, do I do the work for them, any part of the work for them. Sometimes I will help them start. So that's something called like hand over hand. Help grab someone's hand gently and guide it to get started. But usually what I will do is, the project we're doing today, we're going to be filling in a circle. I'll say, oh, if you don't know how to start, you could start by outlining the circle. A lot of times that's enough instruction for people to get started. When it's not, I'll say, okay, let's get started together. And I'll help guide them to start outlining the circle and then say, see, that's what we're working on. You try and do the rest. And they usually can. You know, if you're to the point where everything has to be hand over hand, then art might not be the best engagement option for them. It might still be great and beneficial. You can judge that by their reactions, by their smiles, how much they're enjoying it. But for so long, people with Alzheimer's can do art on their own with just enough guidance and prompts. Okay. So please let them do the work. The one thing I don't ever do is draw or write on their paper without their hand being involved also. I don't want it to be my art. I don't want me to do something as a helpful suggestion and then they're angry that I've messed up their idea. We don't always know what their ideas are, what their plans are. The verbal communication is not always clear. So just let them do it. And when you have advice, you say something like, well, you could try adding a leaf over here. That might look nice. Or I notice a lot of white space. Do you want to put anything there? So you leave as much of it up to them as you can. And you praise their effort, not their results. Like, wow, you're working really hard today. Oh, that's so awesome. One thing I say a lot is, hey, you told me at the beginning of the session that you couldn't do this today. And look what you've done. You've done a great job. So praising their effort, not the results, is another way that you focus on the process of making art rather than the end product. Hopefully you're going to get nice end products, but it just depends on the day, on the project, all that. Okay, so I put this slide in there because I wanted to show you different examples of results. One of the most important things that you can do when you're engaging in art with someone with dementia or memory loss is to be open to the results. So when we say focus on the process, not the product, that's what we mean. These were all done, not in the same group. These were done at different locations, but with the same materials, the same instructions, and the same, they were all seniors with memory loss, okay? And you can see what a range of results you get. So this first slide is a pretty high functioning person, a lot of art talent left, a lot of motor skills left. And so you get a full, nice design. Now, the instruction here was, I'm giving you this square piece of paper and it's got these lines on it. We're going to practice symmetry. So any design you create, any mark you make, you want to put that in all the sections so that you get an even design all the way around. The first one did that pretty darn well. They changed the colors as they went, but the pattern is even all the way around. The second one is one of my favorite pieces of art I've ever gotten out of one of the groups. Does it match the assignment? Not exactly. So it's not even all the way around, but it is symmetrical. So if you split it in half, it's even. But this person who was like an engineer or something like that when he was working, used his own style to create such an interesting design. So he drew what he wanted to draw and then kept splitting it up and splitting it up and splitting it up. And it looks like something that you could repeat as a tile, and it would be interesting and complex. Did it match the assignment? Not exactly. Did I care? Not at all, because I thought it was a great expression of himself. The last one is an example of a pretty common style that you would see in moderate to later stage Alzheimer's. A lot of repeated lines. The connection to each other might not always be there or make sense to you, but this person still had a positive hour making art. They were engaged the whole time. They were proud of their work in the end. So again, I'm not going to say, hey, you're not doing the project the way that I brought it, the way that I intended it. I'm just going to say, wow, I like the way that you're filling up that space. What an interesting pattern that you've got going on there. Because I want people to be able to narrate their experience and say what they're feeling. And I'll ask, hey, probably the most important question you can ask someone with dementia when they're making art is, what can you tell me about it? So you don't have to say, what's that? What's that? Just tell me about your piece. That's so interesting. That gives them a lot of opportunity to share various different things and different memories without feeling like, oh, I drew a dog and they don't recognize that it's a dog. How embarrassing. That's what we don't want. As far as materials that you can use, I mean, almost anything. But when you're picking materials, you definitely want to aim for non-toxic, because a lot of times things do end up in people's mouths. You can be as careful as you can, it'll still happen. But at the same time, you want them to be adult oriented. I rarely use crayons in my groups. Never, actually. Instead, we'll use oil pastels. They are more adult oriented, more likely to be used by professional artists, but we'll just get a version of oil pastels that is safe. So with paint, acrylic, tempera, and watercolor, I never ever use oils with people with dementia unless that is their artistic history. They already know how to use it, they're good at it, and that's what they've done. Oils can be very toxic, and oils require a lot of ventilation and things like that. So don't pick up oils if you're just beginning this. Watercolor is my favorite paint to use with people with dementia. I can make this PowerPoint available, by the way. Watercolor is really nice because it's so liquid, it flows. I don't know if you've ever noticed, if you've ever worked with people making art who have memory loss before, you might notice that they stop a lot. They just physically get stuck. So whether you're using a pencil or a marker or something like that, if it snags a little bit and they have memory loss or Parkinson's or arthritis, their hand doesn't want to really resist that. So watercolor is great because it's so wet that it keeps flowing and you can make the colors really bright. So not only is that my favorite, but I would say that it's the seniors' favorite to work with too. There is a perception that watercolor is really difficult to work with. That is only if you're trying to get really detailed professional results. If you're just exploring, experimenting, playing with it, which is usually the way I describe our art to people, it's great. For drawing, markers are what I use the most. Caps can be frustrating, so just be there, be accessible, help people open them up, get them set up. But they're great because they're super bright. A lot of times something like colored pencils, which I love to work with, seniors don't like because they're not bright enough. They can't visibly see the colors well enough. So it's good to experiment with different materials over time. With clay, you can use Play-Doh, air dry clay, anything that is soft, easy to use. You don't want anything too hard or too messy that can be resistant. Collage is a favorite of mine. You can cut out pictures from magazines. You can provide tissue paper. I've done collages with dried beans before where they just spread glue around and stick the beans to it. Anything. So you can use anything. This picture on the right is an example of a worry doll. It was made with a little clothespin and fabric, glue, cotton for the hair. It's just a really fun project. And that was done at a day program for seniors with memory loss. So there's so much that you can do. Pick an interest and explore it. So other projects, coloring. Coloring is something that I love and hate, and I'm going to show you why actually right now. It is really hard. Coloring has become so popular. Adult coloring books are so popular, but they can be too much for people with dementia because they have so much detail. Look at the difference between these two pictures and think which one feels more accessible, which one feels more overwhelming, which one can I complete with no problem, with no help, and which one am I going to get overwhelmed and frustrated and annoyed with. So I tend to pick much simpler designs that are still very adult. It's not to say that I wouldn't use the picture on the left with this population, but I wouldn't provide that to everyone, and I wouldn't expect them to finish it in an hour, that's for sure. Where with this one, people can color it, but you can also add a layer of, why don't you add some patterns into the different sections? Fill some of them with dots, fill some of them with stripes, okay? Other projects, magazine collage, you can kind of give it a theme. Whatever stands out to you today, what makes you happy, a place that you want to travel. We're going to do a mandala in a couple minutes, so I'll show you how that one works. The person on the left is doing a type of printmaking where we rolled out ink and placed leaves on it and then took a print. There's watercolor down on the bottom right. Weaving is a fun one. So if they used to knit or crochet and can't quite do that anymore, weaving is a very simple motion of in, out, over, under, very simple pattern, and people can do that for a long time. You can get ideas various places. I look up ideas on YouTube. Sometimes I look up ideas on Pinterest and just see what looks fun or accessible. And just again, try and remember that while projects for kids might look really fun, make sure it doesn't feel like it's for kids, because that will upset people. They're not kids. They've lived a whole beautiful life. These are some other examples of things that I've done. Piecing together various collage materials that fit nicely, can be like a puzzle. Here's another example of a coloring sheet that is simple enough to do without issue. These are spin art results. That is a great motor skill project. So if you look carefully at the back here, these are salad spinners. So I put the paper in the bottom of the salad spinner, squirt some paint on there, and then they spin that machine. So I find one with a crank that they can spin, and they love the motion of it. It's a super popular project, even though the result is very abstract and they might not always like that result. They like the process of it. So you can get really creative with the way that you use materials. A lot of adaptations are out there if you're nervous. These right here are some of my very favorite adaptations to use. Those are called water brushes. So instead of giving someone a paintbrush and a cup of water that might easily be knocked over or drank from, this brush can be filled with water. So you just kind of squeeze it as you go. So it's great. Taping down paper can be a very helpful adaptation. Wider handled brushes so they're easier to grip. Pre-cutting collage material so they don't have to cut. Up to you. If you're not interested in physically making art, or your person isn't interested in making art, there's tons of ways to still engage with art. You can look at art online. One of my very favorite finds of the last couple of years is a program called Fake or Fortune. I watch it on YouTube. It's from the BBC, and it's basically just an art professional and a reporter trying to help people prove that art that they own is either real or is a forgery, so that they can, you know, sell it or get it recognized. It's fascinating. If you love art, it's a great program. So that's another way that you can engage with art without the hands-on piece of it. There's a really popular other way. Emily mentioned it at the beginning with the idea of museum visits. MoMA came up with a great model called Meet Me at MoMA, where people can do museum visits, or I adapt it into an online program where you look at pieces of art and have an open-ended discussion about it. So it's not so much an art history lecture, but an invitation to explore different pieces of art, what they mean, why are they popular. So if you guys are willing, I would like to try this with you, just for one picture, one of my favorite ones to discuss. So we're going to look at this picture here. And first off, I just want you to take a minute to look it over. Notice all the different details. And then anyone who wants, you can unmute yourself. And we're just going to start with the question, what do we see here? What are we looking at? So feel free to chime in, or you can do it in the chat and I'll read it out. So on an objective level, what are we looking at? What are the different components of this picture?
I'd like to share. It looks like there's some kind of a screen up front, and that person, I think it's a woman, standing along the side, and there are people in a theater. I kind of see all that.
Okay. And yeah, someone said a theater female not engaged with the screen or show. So if you want to look carefully up here, this is where people are seeing the screen. You can see some seats down here. And this woman here who's kind of not really watching, right?
Yeah. She looks sad.
She looks sad, right? So she might be waiting to go on stage. The question I would ask next is, what is this woman doing? What's her story? What's going on with her? So someone said she might be sad. Someone said she might be waiting to go on stage. What other thoughts have people had about what she's doing? Her gesture looks like concern. So she's got her head down, hand at her mouth. Kind of, well, I'm not going to say, but what is the emotion that you get when you look at this picture? What feeling does it give you?
It's kind of sad because part of it is dark and part of it is really light. And the woman who looks sad is in light. So it's overwhelmingly sad to me.
Excellent observation, Lisa. So the way, yeah, loneliness, Sherry, totally. I love this picture. This is a fascinating one to me. This one is by Edward Hopper, and it is titled New York Movie, and it's from 1939. So you guys were all right when you saw the theater there. It's an old movie theater. And we don't really know the story of the woman waiting on the side. She could work there, maybe, by the outfit. She could be on a date waiting for someone. I've heard people say she looks like she's waiting to go to the bathroom. She looks like she's been stood up. She looks sad. She's concerned. Lots of things. And the way that the artist accomplished this like neat sense of mystery is exactly what you said, Lisa, is the lighting. It's a fascinating picture because 80% of it, this woman isn't in, but our eye goes right to her because she's lit in such a different way than the rest of the picture, which is pretty dark. And we don't even see, there are other people in the picture, but we don't really notice them as much. They're more in shadow. Our eye goes right to her and we think, what's she up to? So that's a really good example of how you can use existing art to lead a whole discussion, to engage without having to go to a museum. Although if you can go, great, you'll see the picture at a bigger scale, you'll get more detail, and you'll get some information about it. But if you can't, you can just look up pieces of art and ask questions about it. Probably the most common one that I ask to people, or that they ask to me, because we look at a lot of modern art, is why is this art? And then you have a discussion about why is it art? Why did this piece of art sell for $100 million when it looks like my kindergartner could do it? Why? And it's a really interesting discussion that people with memory care can absolutely engage in. And yeah, they might give some wrong answers sometimes and say, oh, don't you see that dog in the corner of the picture when there's no dog? But you just say, oh, that's really interesting. I never thought of it that way before, you know, because they're seeing a dog. That's great. They're engaging with the picture. So, all right. Ways to start now. You pick one project or material and just set it up. And like I said, be open to the results. If you're doing art coloring books, just look for kind of simpler ones. These are 3 examples of some good ones that are out there. You can look for your community resources like day programs, museum or gallery visits, community art center classes, anything like that. And you can even just look through art books and see what stands out to people. What do they react to? I find a lot of my art books at used bookstores because new art books are very expensive and there are really good quality images in art books that you can get at a used bookstore. All right, so we're going to spend about 10 minutes doing a little hands-on art if you're willing. So I'm going to stop. Well, I'm not going to stop my screen yet because I want to show you one more thing. These are some examples of what I would call mandalas. This is the project that we're going to do today. I'm going to have you draw one big circle on your paper, and then your assignment is just to fill it up any way you want with line, shape, or color. You're just going to fill that circle up, and we're going to spend about 10 minutes doing it so you can see that they can have any kind of style you want. It can be realistic, it can be abstract, whatever you want to do, but we're going to spend a few minutes just making our own art. Okay, so let me stop my screen. And okay, where's my video? So I just have a piece of paper here. I'm going to take this. You can have a plate, you can have anything you want. Just trace a circle. If you don't have anything to trace, draw a circle. And normally I just do that with pencil. For you guys, I'm going to do it with a black marker so you can see about how big I make the circle. And that is that it fills, you know, as much of the page as you can. You don't have to make it quite as big, but you don't want a little tiny circle either. So if you don't have anything there, take a few minutes to gather some supplies. You can use pencil, pen, markers, crayons, colored pencils, even watercolor if you have the right paper for it. But we're just going to spend a few minutes filling our circle with colors, shapes, and lines. Okay, so I'm going to make it I'm just going to be quiet for a little bit, but if you have questions, you can chime in, and then we'll get back together at like 12:20, okay? So there is no wrong way to do this. I just want you to experiment a little with some different art materials and maybe with color if you have more than one color. If you don't, play with pattern, play with line. Take about 3 more minutes. I know this is a fast one, so don't worry if you didn't finish. Just add some whatever details you want and then find a comfortable place to stop in about 2 more minutes. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer. All right, start thinking about those finishing touches. Any last little details you want to add? I'm glad, Lisa.
Was a lot more pleasurable than I expected. And my husband, he's still working on his, so he's real engaged.
Awesome. Well, I was just going to ask for anyone who's willing, just tell me how it felt. How did it go? And then if you want to hold up your picture and share, that would be great.
Well, is it time to do that or should we give more time?
You can go right ahead.
Okay. So my husband is very proud to show you this picture of what he did.
Awesome.
Do you want to explain it, Joe?
Hell no.
He doesn't want to explain it.
That's
But,
okay.
I said it was phallic.
Oh, please. My husband. Joe is a photographer. So he is very artistic. He said once he discovered photography, though, he put all his energies in that. But up until then, up until around the 9th grade in school, he really did enjoy art. Now, I've been married to the man for 12 years, and I never knew that. So this has been really revealing to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Lisa and Joe. Anyone else want to say anything just about how it was to make some art, or if you want to show it, you can? I'll show mine briefly. Obviously, I've done things like this before, so I was able to get a fair amount done in 10 minutes. But you can see that the lines that make up the overall picture are pretty simple. You don't have to do really complex pictures and you can still get a nice result. Okay. Let's see, hold on. So Robin in the chat said it's a calming process. That's great. I'm glad it felt calming. I definitely hope that it was. It's nice sometimes after a lot of talking to just get quiet for a little bit and just let things go. Anyone else want to mention how their experience was?
My husband did this picture.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, yes.
Which looks like a self-portrait.
Yeah, I like the face. Thanks for sharing. Carol, it looks like you have a hand raised. Did you want to share anything? No? Okay. All right, we're going to quickly go back to our slide, and then we are almost out of time, so I'm going to wrap it up and send it back to Emily. But I just want to show you one other slide of some resources. Obviously, you guys received a resource list when you signed up for this. Has a lot of great things. If you wanted to join something like a discussion group, like the one we looked at with the Edward Hopper picture, there are two that are relatively local and they both take place online right now. So they're on Zoom. One is called See Me at the Smithsonian. The other is Just Us at the National Gallery of Art. Those are the websites. I believe they both require pre-registration, but they are both geared towards people with memory loss and their care partners. So they're really good programs put on by those places. If you want to find an art therapist, you can go to arttherapy.org, or you can go to Psychology Today, and that will help you narrow it down by like where you live, by your insurance. Art therapists who are licensed can take insurance, which is a wonderful thing. And it, you know, I think art therapy for seniors and people with memory loss is excellent. It's just my favorite thing. I have the best job. So any other questions, you guys, we can go ahead and ask them now, and then I'm going to pass it back to Emily. Okay, Emily, go ahead.
I would just like to say before Emily takes over, thank you so much, Annie. And I think that you have really opened our minds into thinking about that art can be fun and it doesn't have to be difficult. Because I think you hit it spot on when we talk about the first thing we think about art is, oh no, I'm not an artist, and we try to put it in our mind as very difficult. And you have just touched on great ideas and just the example that people took on. And thank you all for participating in that too.
Yeah.
Your pictures have been amazing in those. So thank you all so very much. And Emily, we'll let you take it over at this point.
Thank you, Annie. That was really wonderful, so engaging. And thanks everyone for participating. And Yolanda, thank you for facilitating as well. And thanks to the Alzheimer's Association and also Johns Hopkins for working together for this wonderful series. So a final plug for our last workshop in this series. Please join us if you were interested. If you are a caregiver and you and your partner want to join us, there are a few slots open still. That's June 29th, Wednesday, same time as today. That's 11 to 12:30. We will be looking and experiencing Lego play. The presenter is Loretta Vini. I did one of her workshops and I was so positively impacted. It was really wonderful. For example, she said, you have 2 minutes to create something with your Legos around hope. And I thought, what? And oh my gosh, people had Lego gardens. It was just so powerful and uplifting. And again, caregivers, care partners were doing this with their loved ones, with folks living with dementia. That was really wonderful. So it's designed to increase your, grow your toolbox. So you can do this not only with us together, but then beyond, just like all of these. Pre-registration is required so that we can have the Legos made available to you in advance. So please let us know. I've put my contact information in the chat, but I can say it again. If you're interested, please email me at dementiafriendly@baltimorecountymd.gov, but it's also in the chat. So again, thank you all. This has been really wonderful. And reach out if you're interested in any of our other programs or in the Dementia Friendly Baltimore County initiative in general. We are especially seeking folks living with dementia to join our leadership committee. So please consider if you're a caregiver and or living with someone living with dementia. Thank you and have a great day. And huge thanks to Ethel and her communications team for supporting this workshop and the series.
Yes.
Take care. Thank you.